Rafsanjani has died at the age of 82. He was one of the country's leading moderates, and his death comes 4 months before Iran's presidential election. Mr. Rafsanjani was president from 1989 to 1997. Well, Mahan Abedin is an academic and journalist working for the Middle East Eye website. Mahan, thank you very much for joining us here on BBC News. When was Mr. Rafsanjani at the height of his powers, and what did he achieve?
Well, he was a central figure in Iranian politics for at least a decade and a half. Certainly in the 1980s, he was widely recognized as being number 2 to Ayatollah Khamenei, and he also played a central role in the prosecution of the Iran-Iraq war, whilst at the same time being a Speaker of the Iranian Parliament. Following the demise of Ayatollah Khamenei in 1989, he became the president, and he also played a big role in facilitating the rise to power of the current leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. And the two enjoyed a very uneasy equilibrium, a balance of power, if you like, for 4 or 5 years before the tensions got too high and the differences between the two men became too great. And certainly ever since the rise to power of the reformists in 1997, Rafsanjani's star has been on the decline in Iran.
You mentioned the current Ayatollah Khamenei. He's paid tribute to Mr. Rafsanjani, describing him as a companion of struggle despite the differences between them. He says, his cooperation with me dated back 59 years, and my loss of this companion is difficult and overwhelming. But what were the major differences between them?
Well, that's absolutely correct. The two men had a relationship stretching over 6 decades, and Rafsanjani, of course, had impeccable revolutionary credentials in the struggle against the former Shah, as did Mr. Khamenei, the current leader. So they certainly had that in common. And they also worked very closely throughout these years. And despite their huge differences, there were always reports that the two met fairly regularly. And that close rapport, that close bond between them was never truly broken. But nevertheless, I mean, certainly since the late 1990s and beginning in earnest from 2005, when Mr. Rafsanjani tried to run for the presidency again, strong sections within the establishment, notably the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and people close to Mr. Khamenei, started to clamp down on Mr. Rafsanjani's power and prestige. They made sure he lost some of his positions. For instance, his leadership over Tehran Friday prayers, which is a very prestigious role, his leadership over the Assembly of Experts and other bodies. They also went after members of his family. His daughter was jailed for 1 year. One of his sons was jailed for 10 years on security-related and economic charges, economic crime charges. So certainly they felt a certain level of fear from him, and they started to clamp down. And this wasn't helped by the fact that Rafsanjani very opportunistically had tried to get close to the opposition, especially after the 2009 contested presidential elections.
I wonder how his influence might be felt in the future. Would he approve of the direction that Iran is heading in?
Well, you know, that's a good question. I think his legacy will be a very mixed one, because although he tried very hard in his final years to get close to the opposition, they never really truly accepted him. Certainly the reformist, you know, the classic reformist around the former president, Mr. Khatami, they never accepted him. And even the new generation Green movement type people, they also had deep reservations about him, because at heart Mr. Rafsanjani was an authoritarian. He wasn't a reformist, and even during his presidential term from 1989 to 1997, in keeping with his neoliberal philosophy, he had this Chinese model of reform in mind for Iran, in the sense that the country would remain authoritarian at a political level, but that it would open up economically, would become fully capitalist and fully integrated into the global economy. And of course, Iran is not China, so that never really worked out. So even amongst the opposition people, reformists and people who truly want to open up the Iranian system, you know, he was never really fully taken on board. So in that sense, his legacy is very mixed. I mean, the establishment had completely eschewed him by the time of his demise. He'd lost many of his key connections and his positions, and he never really fully integrated himself with the opposition.
Mahan Abedin from the Middle East Eye website, thank you very much.
You're welcome.